Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez. Hey, Chris, how you doing?
What's going on? Back again.
Back again, and we're here to talk Porky's.
Oh, what a great
Uh,
movie.
yeah, this is for those that don't know, that can't read. That's Chris DePetrillo. He's my partner in crime in reviewing all these classic '80s sex comedies. As I guess that's the term we're using, right?
Yeah, I mean I guess that's the official terminology.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can call them teen comedies, you can call them, and honestly, like, sex comedies brings up an image. And really, when you think of the image that it brings up, it's pretty much the movie we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, the OG, the original gangsta of the teen
That's
sex comedies of the 80s.
It's funny because every time we've discussed, and I know the first one I wanted to do was Last American Virgin. That's kind of what gave me the idea for this, because when we talked about it and I brought it up at some point, and then I realized how many people hadn't actually seen that movie. And it was like, okay, we got to talk about this movie and we got to introduce it to people. And then after that, when we decided, okay, we'll make this a regular thing. The second one, we were trying to think of, okay, what are we going to do? And we ended up settling on, just one of the guys.
Just one of the guys, which has popped up recently on Pluto TV. We were just talking about that the other night. So that's back in the rotation of the streaming devices and stuff.
Yeah. And it's funny because I hadn't seen that movie, like, as I mentioned last time, like all the way through, maybe since it came out, or since it was on video. And then you've brought up Porky's more than once. Mm-hmm. And then this time as well. And I've been trying to avoid it. I don't know why. I think the reason was because it had been so long since I seen it. And we talked, and we were just talking about it. And Garrett, our mutual friend, your co-host on the Cobra Kai review show. And I should have got you to review this before I put it up, but hopefully everything on there is correct. You can correct me if any of it's wrong. But he mentioned that he hadn't seen it. He remembered wanting to see it so bad, and that he probably hasn't seen it in 25 years. And I think I might fall into that category of not having seen it. And it may be longer than 25. I mean, we might be talking 35 years and maybe longer ago than that, because I'm 51. So
that just blows my mind. And I know that I rewatch things. Like, it's, movies are like music to me. Like, if a song is good enough, I'm going to listen to it a million times. It's the same with movies and TV shows. Even before I was married, before I had Zach and he was growing up with stuff, if it was just me alone in my apartment, it could be a movie I've watched 10 times over. Hey, I'm in the mood to watch this. I'm in the mood to watch Porky's or just one of the guys, and I would watch it. So I think that is in part due to my fandom of, movies and, absorbing all the knowledge of them and stuff. But for it to be that long, especially with a movie like Porky's that's regularly popping up on cable or on Netflix right now, all three of them are on Tubi, which is part of the reason why we decided to roll with this one tonight. That blew my mind that it's been so long for some of you guys.
Well, yeah, and I guess maybe a movie like Porky's, if you're married, you have kids, it's not the kind of movie you're going to watch necessarily with the wife, or definitely not with the kids. And
you'd be everyone listening would be find it.
Please don't say what you're going to say.
Oh, no, he has not seen the whole movie.
Okay.
No, but he is aware of how much the sketch artist scene cracks me up. So, he can't pick up on what it's all about. And, he's not allowed to see anything with, nudity, definitely not to the excessive nature of what Porky's offers or anything like that. But he knows that it's a goofy movie with goofy scenes that will crack me up.
So here's the thing, and you brought up something that, so when rewatching this movie, and again, I will say, and I said this about just one of the guys, I had not seen the full movie in 25 years, but I've seen parts of the movie at various times. And, so when I see that it's on cable, I'll turn it on and I'll watch to a certain point, or, I'll watch for a bit. And then, if it's the kind of movie, if I notice, I got a new streaming service, it's on demand, I'll just fast forward to certain classic scenes. But what struck me when I watched the whole movie was it doesn't have as much nudity as what you remember. Certain parts are loaded with nudity. And then for the rest of the movie, there's not much, you know, like it's mostly, it's like an R-rated Grease in a way, like, you know, without the
it's
music.
got that throwback. I was almost going to say like an after school special, but that's not what I'm going for. But it's on the light side of the teen comedy. Like it's very sophomoric. Like it's very Police Academy-ish with how they're pranking each other and goofing around and stuff like that. And, you know, you've got, obviously it's R-rated, so the language is a little bit more crass than some of the movies. But really, other than going to Porky's, which for those that don't know, the movie is named after the strip club that the high school kids go to. Other than that, and then the infamous shower scene, really the movie is centered on the banter and the bonding between the group of guys.
Right. And like the guys that I just showed there. And I mean, really, you know, it's basically the T-Birds without their leather jackets on. Like it's just a bunch of guys from that era. They're stereotypical characters, you know, like if I'm looking at this group here, I mean, here's Danny Zuko, and here's you know, there's Duty, and you know, all the different guys. I don't see a Kaneki there, but you know, and then you've got your rivals that are clearly the bad guys, and you can tell just by looking at them that they're bad guys, you know, like the guy in Greece that, you know, rode the motorcycle and had the Mexican girlfriend, and, you know, like, and he had like the scar and everything. I mean, clearly a bad guy. Like, you know, it's all you need to, you know, to know. So I'm watching this and I'm like that. And then it's like, if you were going to put this movie, and I'm sure you've probably watched the clean version, you know, at various times as well, you know, that would air on TV, like you're not even cutting that much out. But some of the stuff, like there's, you know, the famous scene, and it's one of the ones I always watch, and with Kim Cattrall, and where she is the now, what is she? Is she a student or is she like a TA?
She's the female gym teacher, like basically the understudy for Beulah Ballbricker, who was notoriously like the old female gym teacher.
Yeah, the one who grabs the guy's junk
in
the shower. I got you. Yeah, so the Kim Cattrall, who, you know, went on to fame in Sex and the City, plays, you know, like the assistant, and she has sex with the assistant you know, coach, I guess, who is like barely older than the rest of the kids. And in fact, I'm guessing the actor is probably like the same age. Because it's funny when you're watching it, like it's almost a little, you know, it almost looks like it's a coach having sex with a student, you know, like, and they don't really, it's not too graphic, although like there's quickly you can kind of see some lower half body nudity if you're like going frame
when he yanks her skirt.
I would never do that. But she makes like the loudest sex noises, and the whole Jim can hear this, as you know,
she's howling and it's echoing through the gym,
and everybody knows what's going on. The one coach is laughing, like he has to hide behind these wall mats.
That's the part that always gets me. When he's cracking up, it's one thing, but when he goes and hides behind the pad on the wall, that's the part that gets me every time.
And there's the old coach that every single person in this building knows exactly what's going on, except for this one guy, and he's like looking around like, is there an owl stuck in the rafters here or something? Like he has no idea, completely oblivious, and everyone else is just killing themselves laughing.
And then when the young coach comes down, his excuse was that he was taking such a crap that he was railing for it.
Yeah. Oh my God. It was just a classic scene. You know, and the movie very much centers around like the main character, Pee-wee. And so much like the first movie we talked about, which was Last American Virgin, him and his friends are trying to get laid, you know, basically, you know, through the movie. Although, you know, I'm sure Meats, you know, had his more than his fair share. There's the one scene where he's talking about basically how did they term it? Almost like initiating a freshman. You know, like with the girl.
Oh yes, yep.
Yeah.
Talking about.
Yeah, where, you know, and it's like, so this girl is clearly like way younger than him.
Why do they call you Meat?
Yeah, why do they call you? And he's like, well, you know. And okay, so before I saw this movie, so this movie came out in 1981, so I was 10, and I lived in Victoria at the time, and a lot of my friends had seen it already, and I hadn't. So they're using the terminology from the movie. They're calling each other, like one guy's calling himself meat and all this stuff. And then they are joking and they're calling me Pee-wee. And I have no idea like what the reference is because I haven't seen the movie and I'm 10. Like we're not really thinking about sex, especially I don't know what 10-year-olds are like now. They're probably a little more exposed to that sort of thing than we were and I'm older than you, so it's probably even more different for me. So I knew it was negative. I just didn't exactly know why, and they knew I didn't know, so they made it even like that
just made them go along with it even more.
Exactly, yeah. And they would use other references, and then even like there was at the very end of the movie, it's almost like an Avengers type thing where they like a credit scene. Yep. Where Pee-wee finally is going to get laid, but he can't find a condom, and they're like giving him a condom, but it's too big, and yeah.
I love when he goes and he's like, it doesn't fit, and I think it's me. He goes, "Hey Pee-wee, what do you think this is? The return desk at Macy's?"
Yeah. And they're laughing, and then Miss Ballbricker shows up, and I know that penis, she like tackles the dude and whips off his pants, like.
And we should note too, for people who have not seen this or might have forgotten, Porky's the setting. It's supposed to be taking place in the 50s,
right? Yeah.
So we're talking about how out of place this might seem for some people. This was not like an early 80s goofball sex comedy like how Revenge of the Nerds was or anything. This, even though it came out at that time, you made the Grease comparison. It's taking place in an era before when it was actually released. So a lot of the stuff that might have been commonplace when this movie actually came out was a completely different world for the setting that this was supposed to be in.
Well, and the funny thing is though, I mean, you say that, but yet when you're watching it, like for me, I remember originally watching it, it didn't feel like a movie that took place like 100 years ago. You know what I mean? Like it almost looked like it was taking place at that time, except like the music was different. This clothes they were wearing were a little bit different. Although like even this scene here, like again, I'll go back to it. Like that, I mean, that doesn't necessarily look like 50s clothes.
No, that could pass for 70s or very early 80s. For sure.
This is, I mean, the car in the background I think this movie had a pretty low budget. The budget was $4 to $5 million, which in 1981, that's probably like 20 million now. But the thing did 160 million at the box office. Like this, that's like $1 billion now, almost. Like if you're
Canada's greatest film for the longest time.
Yeah. I mean, still, I bet you it's still in the top 10. Even in gross revenue, and if for adjusted inflation, like that might be number one. Like if I don't know, I'm sure there's lists out there, but and it was it was very low budget. So I mean, they probably didn't really take the time to make it as authentic for the era as even Grease did, that came out like 4 years earlier, where again, like you said, it literally takes place in the same, I think it's the same year, because they were talking about Eisenhower as president, so that was somewhere between 1956 and 1960, and I think the original Grease was 56. So, it's the exact same era. And oh man, the scary thing about that though is, okay, that's 25 years ago. So that would be like watching a movie now that took place in 1997.
Which feels like yesterday to me.
So. I know, right? Like, yeah, I hate when I make those comparisons. Like, when you talk about U2 and they've been around as long now as like Frank Sinatra had been when I was in high school. Like you don't even want to go down that rabbit hole.
Especially when the memories are so vivid. Like,
right.
Like we've talked about plenty of stuff, but I mean, even if you were to bring up Dallas, okay, the Dallas Mania trip, great trip. We were all there, like our whole crew. We had a great time. That's already over 6 years ago.
I know.
It feels like yesterday. It doesn't feel like it's been that long. So to especially go even further back and to say, that would have been 1997. Like I can remember what I was doing on certain days in 1997.
It's funny because you say that too. And then when I think of other things in 1997, it does feel like a really long time ago. So, I mean, I think that a lot of it is what you're talking about. Like if you're talking about music, like music is timeless. A lot of movies are timeless, but in certain situations, like when I think of 1997, I remember like the Montreal Screwjob. Okay, that does feel like 25 years ago. One Night Only, I remember seeing. I was I was like, I was with my buddies and I got so wasted, and it's literally probably one of the last times I ever drank. You know, and it was like, it was so bad that my friends were telling me like, you got a problem, dude. And then it was shortly after that I, you know, I realized I had to quit, and I did. And, you know, and it's, you know, my life is a lot better now, but that's why it seems so long ago. So, you know, but when we go back to this, like, we're, you know, again, we're talking 40 years ago. So when I finally did get to see it, go back to that, I got to see, okay, what they're all talking about. And it's like, oh my God, you assholes, you know, you calling me Pee-wee, you know. But the funny thing is, like, you know, I was probably a Pee-wee. Like, I don't know about the, you know, the size and everything like that, but I'm just talking like in general. Like, I was the guy in the group that, you know, like everyone made fun of, and, you know, whatever. But I was
you smash an egg on anybody's head?
No. But I think, like, lovable, you know, you know, like, nobody hated Pee-wee, like. And same thing with, you know, our hero in Last American Virgin. Like, he was a nice guy, you know, Gary. And then, you know, and he had friends that, you know, he was the nice guy in the group, but he was also the nerd in the group, you know. And you know, and
he was like the little brother. He was like the one that always got like hazed a little bit
and couldn't get laid to save their life. And that was me in high school. You know, so but so we got that. And again, so you go through the movie, you know, we talked about these things, and it's kind of like, there's no, other than the fact that, you know, the central theme of this movie is basically that they're trying to get laid. The climax, if you want to put it that way, you know, is when they end up, you know, at the, as you put it, the strip club that the teenagers go to, which, you know, just in itself, that sentence is ridiculous. But I'm old enough, I should say, to remember, you know, a time period like that, you know, where not necessarily strip clubs, but there was a bar that was in my neighborhood that, you know, it served alcohol and everything. Guaranteed the average age of the person at the bar was about 16 and a half. You know, and the legal drinking age here is 18. So, you know, this is from an era where you'd walk in and they'd ask you for ID, and all you had to do was show them something with a birth date on it, that, you know, with no picture. You know, if your name was Manuel Gonzalez, you know, as long as the birth date matched up, they would ask you, what year were you born? And as long as it matched what it showed on the ID that they were holding, they'd let you in. And
I worked at a bar like that years ago.
And you know, and of course, like, shortly after that, I mean, literally by the time I was probably 20, 21, you know, by then they were, you know, they had picture IDs and everything. But so this was, you know, this was a period, and I'm sure in the 50s there was places, but the thing is, you had to have money. And so even in these guys, so they wanted to get a couple girls, and how much is it going to cost for us? And they've got $100. So $100 in 1955, I mean, that's at least $1,000 now.
Yeah, that's not just a trip to the ATM. That's a
no. I mean, and these are teenagers. So how many teenagers have $1,000? You know, like, between them, not too many in 2022. You know, if they are, they've got money, and they've probably been to this Porky's, you know, every weekend. You know, these guys, they saved up for a year to get this $100, so, you know, they could go and see these girls. And, you know, and who knows what's going to happen when we get to that back room, you know, like, all the fantasies you have. What they don't realize is nothing's happening, you know, but they don't know that. But Porky, he knows their kids, and he knows he can take advantage of them. So he's like, he basically sends them to an area where the girls are going to be, except it's got a trap door, and they get dropped from the room into like
it's like the swamp, like the bar is like on top of like the swampland,
right? Yeah. See, and this is where you come in, because you remember all the details, and I'm like, just, I'm old and I don't remember things. So even though I just saw it 2 days ago, so they're humiliated, and then he does it twice, right? Like, to them, like, almost on the same trip.
He gets them, they fall into that, and then they fall off like the little bridge he's got.
Okay, yeah.
Because they try to go back in, and they're arguing because Mickey wants to go back in and beat his ass.
Yeah.
So it's basically that he sets them up, tries to get rid of them. They try to go back in. He just kind of like, you know, go screw, gets rid of them again. And that's when they start to plan their vengeance. against Porky, figure out how they're going to go about it. And, you know, it's not like one straight path, because you're still getting like their high school situations alongside everything. And it's really the Mickey character that's the catalyst, because he keeps going back, and his brother's a cop.
Right.
And his brother's like, look, he's a badass dude. The guy that's the sheriff is actually his brother. Like, it's all corrupt over there. Just stay out of there. And finally, they wind up beating Mickey so bad that everyone's like, all right, we're going to go get this SOB.
Yeah. And so Mickey's kind of like, other than, I would say, Meat, probably like the next coolest one in the group. Maybe.
No, Tommy Turner. Tommy Turner's like the leader of the crew. Yep.
Oh, okay. See, I'm lost on the.
Yeah, Mickey's kind of like the one that they'll razz him for being like the local yokel. He's kind of like the country boy type of guy. You know, Meat's the Arn Anderson. He's the enforcer of the crew.
Yeah.
I think Tommy's kind of like the Zach Morris. I'll throw that comparison out there.
Okay.
And then I think Billy's considered the brains.
Right.
Kavanaugh's like the tough guy, which Kavanaugh
definitely Screech.
Which one? Oh, Pee-wee, yeah.
He was Screech, yeah.
You know, Kavanaugh was like the tough guy, which he was actually kind of like the outsider for a little bit, because Kavanaugh was the racist, and he didn't like the new kid, Brian, who was Jewish. So there was a conflict there until he overcame everything. You know, his dad was an ex-con, and he
Jewish guy named McCarty.
What's that?
Jewish guy with the last name McCarty.
No, Billy. What was Billy's last name?
I'm looking at it. It says Billy McCarty.
Not Billy. Brian Schwartz.
Yeah.
Yep, okay, I threw myself off. Yeah. Billy was the tall one that was always with Tommy.
Right. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. So they were like the brains and the schemers of everything.
Yeah. So
Billy's the one that gives Pee-wee the look when they're peering in the shower, and the fat girl is in front of the hole, and Pee-wee screams at her, and Billy's eyes just widen, and he's like,
yeah. She's like, get out of the way, lard ass, and like screams, like they're incognito staring at through these holes at the girls here, you know,
which is not anything that would fly today.
No. And then you know, they're all like, they're into it, they want us, you know, and all this, and these I mean, it's funny because these girls clearly know someone's watching them at one point, and you know, they don't really care. It seems kind of like, right, but then.
They play into it. They slap the soap on Tommy Turner's tongue and everything.
Yeah. And even like, you know, kind of like making fun of the heavier girl and stuff like that wouldn't fly. They wouldn't be showing that stuff, you know. The teacher like seeing his junk there and going
and grabbing
grabbing it, trying to pull him through the wall.
But that leads to, I mean, the whole sketch artist scene, the whole point of it is that Beulah Ballbricker, she is your typical like grumpy old lady. You know, she is a Beulah. That's probably why they named her that. And she has it in for Tommy Turner. And when she catches him literally hanging out in the shower, she wants to get him in trouble. And the principal's like, well, we can't do anything. And the principal is like a very diminutive little British guy. Like, he doesn't want any trouble. He doesn't want to deal with any of this stuff. And the two coaches are in the background, and they're just already laughing, like, as soon as the scene starts. And she's like, we can have a lineup. We'll put hoods over the boys' heads. That way no one's embarrassed. And the principal's just like, oh, God. And
she wants a lineup where they all drop trowels.
She wants a penis lineup. And the same coach that got busted for having sex with Kim Cattrall, at this point, he's like falling on the ground laughing about this. And he's like, I have an idea. Let's bring in one of the sketch artists, and we'll have her describe exactly what she saw. And we'll hang up wanted posters all over school. Have you seen this prick? And that whole scene, just the delivery. And I have no doubt they were probably laughing for real when they filmed that scene.
Oh, how could you not?
But no matter how many times I see this movie, that scene will crack me up every time. Just the sight of them laughing, it's just a hilarious scene.
That and the one for me, it's that one and the one where. So when I talk about like scenes that I would fast forward to and everything, it's not the shower scene. I mean, I'm not 10 or 15. It's that one. It's the one in the thing that is almost PG in the sense of not showing anything, but definitely not PG in the content and the sounds and everything, but hilarious.
With the coaches in the locker room.
Yeah. Yeah. The guy you mentioned, Coach Roy, the guy that that had sex with Kim Cattrall there, he might be outside of the names we mentioned. Okay, so you had Kim Cattrall, who went on Sex and the City. You had Alex Karras, who was the sheriff, who obviously former NFL player. I think he did some wrestling.
Yeah, Dave just talked about him not that long ago on Observer Radio. His name came up.
And I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was married to Susan Clark.
Yes, because they were the parents. 80s TV fans might remember them as the parents of Webster.
Webster.
On
okay,
Webster.
I was going to ask you that. Yeah, because they were. And I've seen Kim. Susan Clark was in a bunch of movies. I think she was in the original Straw Dogs. Could be wrong about that. She was definitely in Night Moves with Gene Hackman. Coogan's Bluff with Clint Eastwood. I pulled up her list here, and so but she's Canadian. And Alex Karras was not, but I guess, probably landed immigrant status or something and got in the movie. He'd have definitely been the biggest name in this movie at the time.
Yeah, especially at that time, for sure.
Yeah, because this was right before Webster. Susan Clark would have been a pretty big name as well. Kim Cattrall was not, but I think some of this stuff where like they show her being featured might be because of how famous she became later. Like this,
and she went to the Police Academy not long after this. Police Academy 1 was 1984, and she had like that sex pot, attractive girl type of role there.
And then, of course, in Sex and the City, that was her whole gimmick too, as well, right? I didn't watch Sex and the City, but I know enough about the stereotypes. Are you a Carrie? Are you a whatever her name was? That's how much I know. I know Carrie was
Carrie. I think Carrie was Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Control was Samantha. I know
Samantha. Yeah. So are you a Samantha? Are you a Carrie? Or whatever. But the next person in this movie, and maybe the only other one that would be well known for anything else, was Boyd Gaines, who played Coach Roy, and he had a big role in One Day at a Time. Played Valerie Bertinelli's boyfriend, later husband, I believe. Also in a lot of TV shows, Fame, Frasier, LA Law. Got the face, like you'd recognize the face when you see it, kind of thing.
Yeah, he was a character actor. He popped up a lot of places.
Yeah, and even when you look at him now, I'm looking at a picture of him from 2013. I mean, he still looks kind of the same, kind of like Paul McCartney a little bit. Like just doesn't age.
The kid that played Brian Schwartz the year before this, he was the Jewish kid here, but he was the Italian tough guy in Caddyshack.
Oh wow. You know what? I don't think I ever seen Caddyshack.
Really?
Do we have to cancel the show now?
No, this is yours. Look, we can do it. Look, I'll have to start giving you homework assignments. You have to watch this movie by the next time we record.
Now, it's not going to fit for our theme, but it's probably a movie I need to see. And there's a running joke. Dames will be watching this for sure, and he's constantly just rolling his eyes at the movies that I haven't seen. And then there's movies I have seen. When you talked earlier about, how you go, your movies are your go-to and kind of thing, like I've just never really been that. The one movie that I've seen well over 100 times is Rocky IV, because for a long time, it was the only movie I owned. From the time I was, like very young, like, 10, maybe even earlier. And then, even when I left home and was on my own, like I was always poor, like very poor. So I didn't have, a lot of times I couldn't afford cable or anything like that. So I had the one movie. And then I had one, even as an adult, I had one pay-per-view on videotape, and it was WrestleMania 4. And my son watched it 100 times. Like that's his favorite wrestling of all time is WrestleMania 4, which is probably like the worst WrestleMania. But he loves it because he can remember every single move of every single, he's 31 now.
It just became ingrained in his brain from watching.
Exactly. So everything is being compared to WrestleMania 4 in his mind. So if it's better than WrestleMania 4, he likes it. And if it's worse, he doesn't. And except in his mind, WrestleMania 4 is the greatest. So nothing compares to it. Poor kid. That's Paul Jr. He's been on this show. But yeah, so for me, like, again, I would watch it once more often than not, and then just never watch it again. Once I did get cable, I would go through, but I've got a bit of ADHD. So I have a hard time sitting and watching something for 2 hours, or in this case, like 98 minutes or whatever it is. So I would never sit through. One exception, I never own the movie, but if I ever am flicking through stations and it's on, I stop. There's 2 movies actually that I do that for. I will stop and watch it from whatever point I'm at till it's over. and that's Shawshank Redemption.
Oh, great
and
movie.
and
even if it's on commercial TV, even if it's the edited version. Yep.
Well, see, if it's on commercial, then I'll just change the channel when the first commercial comes, and then maybe I'll go back to it, maybe I won't. And then the other one was Dazed and Confused. I can't not watch that movie. The soundtrack, the acting, the the actors and everything. But that one could fit in our theme. But I think we got some ideas for what we're gonna do next.
Growing.
What was that?
Our list keeps growing. Every time we have a conversation, we're like, what are we going to talk about? Did we mention this one?
3 more. I had some suggestions, and none of them really, I don't know if people actually quite understand what kind of movies we're talking about, because some of the suggestions I get are weird. They don't fit even close. But, whatever. If enough people want it, maybe we'll watch it and talk about it. But so I'm just looking to see. I want to make sure we didn't miss anything. So when we call it the OG, like again, like when we've kind of gone, on this show and what we do, we don't really go through the movie like from point A to point Z and talk about everything in between. We're more just talking about why we like it and certain scenes and everything like that. But there is elements of this movie though that, like, again, as I'm watching it and paying my limited attention by starting the movie at 12:30 a.m. and kind of starting to drift off by the end of it, there's things that I'm watching and it's like, oh, that's from this movie, that's from that movie, like, except it's not, it's the other way around. Like, they got it from Porky's. And except for, like, I would say, like, there's some of this stuff that looks like it's directly from Grease, except they're like, okay, what if Grease was X-rated? Then this is how we would have done that scene. I mean, not quite, but like, it's not like a direct ripoff or anything like that. But I just, like, again, I did. That's the thing that struck me when I rewatched this thing. It's like, if Grease was R-rated, like, it would have been a completely different movie. Like, even some of the stuff they're talking about in that movie, like, basically the whole premise was, like, Danny Zuko got laid, and then he's gonna hook up with this chick again, and the chick is like fresh. There's no way she didn't have sex with him on that thing. She's being presented as like this,
all the Grease fans gonna be watching this like, how dare you? Don't.
And so if it was, we would have got a shower scene. We would have got all the stuff we got in Porky's, but just with better actors and better music and much better budget. Now
I'm going to throw this out there here, just because we've talked about the sequel. We've actually even talked about like covering it at some point.
I definitely want.
I am more of a fan of Grease 2 than I am of Grease 1, and I know for some people that's sacrilege.
You've said that to me before.
And my sister and my mother, because if you remember in the 90s, they re-released the soundtrack and they had like the sing-along edition on, I think it was like TBS or TNT, and my sister recorded that. So it was like Grease 1 was like just constantly being like hammered home. And I had remembered the sequel from when I was younger, but they didn't show it as much as the first one. And eventually I got my hands on the VHS tape, and I'm like, you know what? This is not as bad as some people say it is. I actually kind of dig it. Like, I'm into it. I like it. And people have thought for years that I was crazy, but I would watch Grease 2 over Grease 1 any day of the week.
Okay. So you know what? I would agree with the last thing you said there for sure. If I'm looking and I've got Grease 1 and Grease 2 ahead of me and I got to watch one movie, I'm going to actually watch Grease 2. And that's not, but I would not say that I like Grease 2 more than Grease 1. I would just say I've seen Grease like so many times that for me, like it would be almost fresh to see Grease 2. I have seen Grease 2 more than once, and there's probably less than 20 movies I can say that about that I've watched more than once. And Grease 2, I've definitely watched more than twice. Like, I don't know how many times, but I do love that one. Like, there's certain, like, the songs from that movie, like I could sing them. The cast is really good. Like, there's a lot of people in that movie that went on to other things.
Yeah, Michelle Pfeiffer for one.
Michelle Pfeiffer. The character she plays in that movie is, I mean, that, like, if I had like a hall pass, like, she's on the top of the list. And like, that is like my perfect woman, like that, Michelle Pfeiffer in 1983 or whenever that movie came
much better
out.
Pink Lady than Stockard Channing, who was like 50 when they filmed Grease.
Yeah, I mean, she was like 35, but yeah, and she was cute. But actually, the funny thing is with Grease, and total sidebar here, but I was in Grease in high school. I played I played the nerd, but I always used to tell people I played like duty, just because my own complex wouldn't allow me to say I played the nerd. Now I don't care. But when I was like 25 and I would lie and say I played, like I was one of the T-Birds, but no, I wasn't. Yeah, I had so much fun. Like that is like my favorite memory of high school, is being in that play. And we practiced that thing for like 6 months, I think. Like maybe not quite that long, but it was like, and the last month was every single night for like 6 hours. Like it was so good, like in my memory. And I don't have a videotape, so I can't compare it. But so when I watch the movie, I'm thinking of the person that I knew, that I grew up with, that was playing like Stalker Channing's character. I'm drawing a blank on her name. What's her
Rizzo?
Name? Rizzo, yeah, Rizzo. The girl named Susie that I went to school with. I don't doubt she could be watching. I'll post on my Facebook. I think I'm Facebook friends with her. She is the ultimate Rizzo to me, you know. And Sandy, the girl that played Sandy, this is a great story. We had this girl that looked the part. She looked like Sandy in After the Transformation. Like she looked exactly like that Sandy.
A little bit of an edge to her.
A little bit of an edge, and you know, and like it's the glamour girl kind of thing. So she looked the part. She had a decent enough voice, but she was not a very good actress. I don't remember her name. The understudy for the role, girl by the name of Rochelle, she ended up, they I don't know what happened with Sandy, but they let her go with like a week left before the show started. And this Rochelle was going to have to take over Sandy. And she did the most incredible job. Like you would have thought she had been doing it the whole time. She must have been preparing on her own because she's the understudy, and she nailed everything. And to me, like when I think of Sandy, I think of this Rochelle. And the funny thing is, I'm friends with her on Facebook. Her name on Facebook is Rochelle Sandy. Now, I don't know if that's back to like that, or if that was actually her middle name or what.
If it's a callback, like you know, people use nicknames.
Or if it's callback, yeah, because I mean, you know, high school is the best time of your life. And then she, you know, she got leads. Like she was only in grade 10. So our high school was 10 to 12. And you know, you guys down there, it's like freshman, sophomore, senior, right? Like for us, it's just grade 10, grade 11, grade 12. So she got the lead in grade 10. And then grade 11, she got to play, we did The Wiz, and she was the Wicked Witch of the West. Whatever that was, or except like ours was kind of a mixture of Wizard of Oz and The Wiz. Like we played around with the script, and so I had an extra role in that one, and I was a flying monkey. And then in the third one, it was Anything Goes, and she had a lead in that as well. So I was in the same grade as her, and she went on, and I think she's still doing like musical theater and stuff. And I don't know if that's her career, but might be. But she still looks great and everything. So.
So you did not follow the Porky's path in high school and hang out in the showers with your trousers torn?
I could tell some stories.
I mean, you don't have to admit it. I mean,
no, I didn't do that, but I did similar things. I think a lot of us did. Not anything illegal, but you know, you did as much as you thought you could get away with, because I tell you, dudes, like the kids today. Here we go. The kids today, they have no idea. Like. You can like pick up your phone. Did you hear? Do you listen? Are you pretty current on like Brian and Vinny's show, Wrestling Observer, and all that? Like in
I'm not caught up on Brian and Vinny. Last thing I listened to was last night's Observer Radio.
Okay, but like relatively current. Like I'm just there was an episode of B&V not that long ago, maybe a week ago, where Brian. Because he came up with the idea on Wrestling Observer Live, but he couldn't do it on Wrestling Observer Live, so he did it on Brian and Vinny, where he was trying to make the point of how NXT has bikini models and like they think that's going to draw ratings, and he's like, "Give me describe someone in NXT," and he's like brunette, big boobs, and stuff. So he's typing in these things into his search engine and seeing how fast it would take him to see a naked version of what they're trying to show you in a bikini, and he's like. It's like 2 seconds, you know, and any kid, you know, has access to this, you know, if you got an iPhone. But for us, like back then,
it's like going back to the diva days.
Yeah, but if you wanted to see a boob, like they were hard to find, like in 1985, you know. You know, you go to the library and maybe, you know, see like a photography book, or I'm like, you know, I'm coming up with stuff from my memories, or, you know, you watch Porky's and you try to figure out,
it's like
how could I
Porky's 2, the beginning of Porky's 2, Pee-wee, because so at the end of Porky's, Pee-wee winds up getting laid because there's the girl that hangs out with the group, and he winds up getting laid after all. So Porky's 2, the subtitle of it is The Next Day, because it's supposed to take place immediately after the whole Porky's incident. And Pee-wee wakes up and he notices that he doesn't have morning wood. He's like, maybe it doesn't work the day after you get laid. And he's kind of going into like panic mode. And he's got the National Geographic under his mattress.
Yeah.
And he takes it out and he's looking at like the tribal woman, because National Geographic had all like the nude tribal woman, and that's what gets his motor running at the beginning of Porky's too.
With the hangers. And and you'd have that. You'd have the Sears catalog if you're really desperate. You know, that might have an ad for a bra. Like that was, you know, like, and you know, Pee-wee was in 1956, so it was even harder. But between 1956 and 1984, it didn't get a whole lot easier to see boobs. I will say that from what they showed in that movie to what I experienced as a young teenager. You know, I got in trouble for bringing a letter to the gas station. Please allow my son Paul to purchase the latest edition of Playboy. And then they had to call my dad to find out which month he wanted. You know, and then of course my dad was like, I didn't give him a letter. Yeah. So, you know what? Your feed is getting a little staggered. So, and we know we've gone 41 minutes. So I feel
with that stuff, when I was younger and I started kind of, you know, getting to that age, we're getting choppy. Can you see me?
Yeah, I can see you, but your audio is not even close to matching up. So maybe we should wrap this up, and we will.
Are you good? Because I can see you just fine.
Yeah, no, it's clearly there's a delay between.
But now I can't hear you.
Okay, you know what? Let's wrap it up. For Chris,
that's not good.
Dez. No.
Yeah, for sure.
And this has been Cup of Joe with Grandpa Dez.